You can start now.
So in the music, there will be no music.
Okay, I put the music for you. Just a second.
Let's start again. Well, Anita, are we online?
Yes, yes, we are.
Yes. Oh, great. So let's start. Well, good morning. I hope you and your beloved ones are all well and safe. These are difficult times, and I want to use this opportunity to send my best wishes to the friends and colleagues who are joining us on Zoom platform and YouTube for the workshop Tourism, Economics and Management. It is my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the School of Tourism and Hospitality at Universidade Federal Fluminense and our postgraduate program, PPG Tour, which celebrates its 5th anniversary this year. We are in Brazil, located in the city of Niterói in Rio de Janeiro state. And Niterói is a beautiful city, bathed by the Atlantic Ocean and the Guanabara Bay, a great place for nautical water sports. Hope you can visit us in the near future. I am Veronica Meyer, member of the organizing and scientific committees and deputy coordinator of the postgraduate program, representing today our dear coordinator, Professor Marcelo Tomé. It is an honor for us to be hosting the 12th edition of the workshop Tourism, Economics and Management, a traditional scientific meeting that has been a network platform of cooperation for tourism researchers from many countries since 2007. This virtual edition was made possible due to the dedication and leadership of Professor Juan Gabriel Brida from Universidade da República, Uruguay, Professor Natalia Porto from Universidade Nacional de La Plata, Argentina, that kindly provided us the Zoom platform we will be using these 2 days. Professor Glauber Santos from Universidade de São Paulo, Brazil, and Professor Osiris Marques from Universidade Federal Fluminense. We also have the collaboration of many others. We thank the members of the scientific and organizing committees, all volunteers, our colleagues, and our students who are supporting us in this organization. Anita, Romulo, Valerio, Aline. A special thank you to the authors that submitted their papers. Well, during these 2 days, we will have 28 presentations delivered by authors from 14 countries. We had more than 350 registrations from 54 different nationalities, professors, researchers, students, doctoral, master's and undergraduate students, and also many
Veronica.
tourism and economics professionals.
Verônica,
Yes?
a sua câmera saiu do...
Sua câmera sumiu.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, he's back.
Back on.
Back? Okay. Okay. So we have also many tourism and economics professionals, as I said, and I want to welcome you all to our meeting. Well, this is a new experience for us, running an online event transmitting to the whole globe with participants from all continents. So I ask you to have a little patience as we are adapting to this new reality. We all miss traveling, meeting people, and making new friends, but we also need to enjoy this special moment made possible by amazing technological advances. Well, now I want to invite my friend and the Deputy Director of the School of Tourism and Hospitality, a Faculdade de Turismo e Hotelaria da UF, Professor Osiris Marques, to say a few words. Please, Professor.
Thank you, Veronica. Hello, everybody. How are you? Nice to meet you all. I am Osiris Marques. On behalf of the Rector of Universidade Federal Fluminense, Antônio Cláudio da Nóbrega, and on behalf of our Director of the School of Tourism and Hospitality, João Evangelista, I would like to welcome you all to the 12th workshop, Tourism, Economics and Management. As one of the organizers, I can tell you that it's a great pleasure to have you here with us. I really hope that all of you and your loved ones are well and healthy, despite the current circumstances we are experiencing. Nowadays, society needs the work of science more than ever. We need to seek answers as researchers to the challenges that humanity has to face. We need to research and provide the right answers that society and tourism need right now, and conduct relevant research that points out new paths to the new problems we have. In this sense, this 12th edition of the workshop is an opportunity to get to know the different researches carried out in the tourism area. It is also an opportunity to expand our research networks, to dialogue with researchers from more than 50 countries, and to have an overview of tourism research that is being developed worldwide in the field of tourism economics and management. And of course, I have to make some acknowledgements. I would like to thank everyone who collaborated so that this event could happen. To Professors Veronica Maia and Glauber Santos for their friendship and partnership. To Professors Gabriel Brida and Natalia Porto for their trust and partnership. And I would like to give special thanks to the members of the research group Behavioral Economics in Tourism and the research group Observatory of Tourism of Rio de Janeiro. Your help was fundamental. Thanks again for being here. I'm sure we're gonna have a really profitable event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Osiris. Now I would like to invite Professor Glauber Santos from Universidade de São Paulo and the editor of the Brazilian Journal of Tourism Research.
Well, good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon for some of the people who are listening to us. I'm speaking on behalf of the Brazilian Journal of Tourism Research, which is the journal of the Association of Brazilian Universities that offer tourism postgraduate programs, what in Brazil means master and PhD degrees. So Brazil, RBTour, the Brazilian Journal of Tourism Research, is the top ranked journal, tourism journal in Brazil. It's an open access journal, so there is no fees for submitting, for publishing or reading the journal. It's completely open access. All costs are supported by the association, by AMPTour, the Association of Universities I just mentioned. So this open access nature of Arbitur is within the movement of open science, which I guess is growing in the whole world, and I think that's a good good choice for publishing your papers. And of course, we are associated with the organizing committee of this workshop, and some of the papers are going to be nominated for or indicated for fast track in the journal. All articles in Arbitur are published in English, although most of them are also published in Portuguese or Spanish. We accept submissions in Portuguese, Spanish, and English, although authors have to provide an English version for the accepted papers. If their papers are accepted, they have to provide an English version. And maybe most of you don't know, but Brazil has a very large community of tourism scholars. We have in Brazil 23 academic journals in the tourism field. And so, but this community is publishing mostly in Portuguese. Most of these journals are published in Portuguese. So it used to be a very closed community in international terms, but this community is getting more and more opened. So Arbitur is trying to help to bridge the gap between the Brazilian, Latin American research and the research elsewhere in the world. So I hope this will motivate you to submit your papers to the Brazilian Journal of Tourism Research. Your paper will be most welcome, and I'm sure it will be a good outlet to disseminate your findings and your ideas. So even if you haven't sent your full paper for the workshop, so you won't be eligible for the fast track, I hope you send your papers afterwards in the regular process. And well, I hope you have a good experience in this virtual workshop, which is surely going to be a very new and an interesting experience. There are people from very different countries in the world and papers from very different perspectives. I think it's going to be a good experience. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Glauber. And now I invite our dear friend, the internationally recognized scholar, Professor Juan Gabriel Brida, from Universidad de la República do Uruguay, to say a few words.
Thank you, Veronica. I'm very happy to be in this 12th edition of the workshop. We started in 2009 in a small town of the north of Italy, Brunico, in the province of Bolzano. And then the workshop at the beginning was most of the time organized in Italy. We were in Enna, in Palermo, in Bolzano. Last year we returned to Italy in Siena, but the workshop was also organized in Mexico, in Colombia, in Argentina, in Uruguay, and so on, 2 times in Uruguay. And, I'm happy for this. I'm sad because we cannot be in Rio, because this was the first opportunity of having the workshop in Brazil and particularly in Rio. But, I hope in next year we can do it physically and not virtual. I welcome everybody to this. I think you will see that with this will be a very nice workshop, because every paper we have a a discussant, or at least some comments and questions. And I hope you will remain with us, not only for the workshop, but also we will organize a virtual seminar starting in October. We will give you the information for this. And with Natalia, we are also trying to put on motion a network, an international network of tourists that we are trying to find some universities from some countries just to close this network. That's all. I think we can start. I am the last speaker, I think, no, Veronica?
Yes, Gabriel, thank you so much. It's really a pity that you're not here, you and Sandra, not here with us. Really a pity. Okay. Tourism is an essential and vibrant economic sector, but it is also a multidimensional phenomenon linked to people's lives. Are you listening to me? Okay. Listening to people's lives and well-being. Right now, we are witnessing an extraordinary moment of history that challenges all of tourists, researchers, educators, policymakers, and service providers. For that reason, in this first day, we will give special attention to the pandemic situation and its impacts on tourism, with papers approaching the COVID-19 crisis from different perspectives and methodologies. To start the debates, I want to invite the presentations of our roundtable, the impacts of the pandemic on Latin American tourism. First, I want to give some technical advices. We will have Romulo Duarte, the PhD student of University of São Paulo, as our assistant, and he will be collecting the questions on Zoom and YouTube chats. If you have any question, please use the chat, always informing your full name, affiliation, and the author to whom the question is addressed. I ask the participants on Zoom to mute their microphones and maintain their cameras on if possible. Well, now I would like to invite the presentation, Tourism, Balance of Payments and COVID-19, What Does Tomorrow Hold in the Countries of the Southernmost Areas of South America? Please, Professor Sylvia London.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the organizer. Can I share?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this paper is about tourism, balance of payments and COVID, and we try to answer this question: what will happen in the future with South American countries? As we know, before the pandemic situation, tourism presented an uninterrupted growth since 1950, even in periods of economic loss. However, Latin America and the Caribbean countries show some peculiarities. For the analysis, the following should be taken into account. Environmental impact and cultural effects of tourism in that area should not be taken for granted. And studies about the relation between tourism and growth that consider a positive effect are focused on small economies and highly specialized in tourism. You know that tourism is often recognized to have positive effect on the long-run economic growth through different channels like generation of employment, investment in new infrastructure, etc. However, in the biggest countries of Latin America, the results of tourism balance are frequently negative. we talk about balance of payment, and we talk about a balance of tourists or travel balance. If you can see here the travel balance for Argentina and Brazil, and also in a very different behavior, the travel balance for Chile and Uruguay. We can ask about the constant deficit in payment balance of these countries, and this deficit has been one of the factors responsible for the stagnation of the developing countries in the area. Then, the objective of this paper is to analyze the connection between tourism as a supplier or as a currency petitioner and the balance of external account for Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay. As I said before, most shows have analyzed the relationship between tourism and growth, showing a positive connection, considering the tourist-led growth hypothesis. However, not all the countries show the same behavior. Caribbean countries can provide a different tourist offer from those countries from South America. Besides, income levels are different. For example, Argentina and Brazil, as you saw in the last chapter, will be more likely tourist importers. Lordetal, for instance, examined the relationship between tourism and the outcome of the current account for Barbados, concluding that the decrease in commercial deficit depends mostly on tourism. Rashid et al. Observed the long-term relationship between tourism and deficit in payments balance for Pakistan using the methodology we will use is the autoregressive model of distributed lags. They found evidence in favor of an indirect relationship between tourism and deficit in the payments. In this paper, the relationship between the net flow of currency caused by tourism, B or BT, the travel balance, and the result of the current account balance will be analyzed. And as I said, we use the autoregressive model of distributed lags methodology, trying to establish the existence or non-existence of a long-term balance relationship between the net balance of tourism and the result of the current balance, being the GDP and the real exchange rate, the control variables. In the case of Argentina and Brazil, the travel balance accompanies the balance movement of the current balance. You can see here. Wait, oh, sorry. Well. And for Chile, the periods are shown in which the travel balance has turned out to be buffering, like in the crisis of 28 or some quarters from 2012 and 2016. You can see here. And in the case of Uruguay, the pattern shows more random. I don't know if you can see more random. Okay. This shows that flows of international tourists do not soften the external restriction in countries like Argentina and Brazil. They compromise it. And in the case of Uruguay and Chile, the pattern is more varied and it is likely the most of the emissive Argentinian tourism goes to these two countries. The data and methodology we take we, as I said, we consider the autoregressive model of distributed lag. The characteristic of this model is the endogenous variable must have an unitary root, and the regressor used cannot be of an integration order greater than 1. We consider three models, but the third is an alternative model was generated for Uruguay because when the previous model does not representative. The series were previously destabilized by the procedure X12 ARIMA, test of unitary root of augmented degree and Phillips Perron were carried out in order to confirm the integration order of the series. Once it is confirmed that the remains of the different regression are white noise, we move on to perform co-integration test. As you can see here, for Uruguay, there is not evidence, for the model 1, there is not evidence of co-integration, and we run the second model. And the third model, we ran this model only for Argentina and Brazil. In the case of Argentina, the foreign exchange outflow for Tunis have a clearly negative effect on the balance current. Model 3 shows with clarity that improvements in the result of tourist balance affect positively the balance currents in the long term. The exchange real rate doesn't show a significant effects over the balance currents in the long term. For Brazil, expenditures for trips abroad have a stable long-term relationship, negatively affecting the result of the balance currents, the current balance, and the result of the travel balance significantly affects the result of the current balance in the short and long term. The real exchange rate shows the expected effect. Only 2 models were estimated for Chile and Uruguay. For Chile, for the purposes of this paper, the conclusions are not relevant. The GDP show positive effect in the short term, but no significant ones in the long terms. And the exchange real rate does show the expected behavior. And in the case of Uruguay, an alternative model was estimated given the stationary of the series, and the in this first model, the result is weak. Some reflection about the post-pandemic situation. The current situation of the COVID complicated, obviously, the tourist activity. As we know, LATAM and the Caribbean are in recession, and the economy recovery is perceived as slow and painful. And we know that since May, the number of international tourists was reduced by 98%. The World Tourism Organization declared that international demand could be reactivated by 2021, with domestic demand recovering the fastest. And for this behavior, this reactivated, there is very important if we consider the external restriction. Avoiding large deficit in the tourist balance will be important for Argentina or Brazil, even for Chile. Given the border closures, promoting domestic tourists could have positive consequences. Boosting the local tourism industry will make it possible to take advantage of the effects of productive linkages and employment benefits. Of course, it is necessary to have some kind of analysis of regional integration and dialogue of regional governments. As a conclusion of the paper, in the current situation, the economists are analyzing alternatives that allow to contribute to the economic reactivation, and tourism could be a key tool. However, is that not always generate only positive effect as shown. It depends on the type of tourism, of course, if it is emissive or receptive. For example, the cases of Brazil or Argentina. The econometric analysis allowed to demonstrate the existence of a long-term relationship between the representative variables of the foreign exchange flows by international tourism, the GDP, the exchange real rate, and the result of the current balance for Argentina and Brazil. In the case of Uruguay, it was not conclusive, and for Chile, we observed that foreign exchange flows from international tourism do not seem to negatively affect the result of the current balance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Professor Silvia. We are collecting the questions, and they will be delivered to the authors by the end of the presentations. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I invite now the presentation COVID-19 impact on the tourism sector of Rocha. Scenario analysis for the 2020-2021 season. Professor Victoria.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Victoria.
I want to share.
Okay.
Okay.
Is she able to share? Romulo, please. Okay, thank you.
Is sharing? Yes?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, my name is Victoria Moñi, and thank you very much for this opportunity. And I will present the work COVID-19 impact on the tourism sector of Rocha, scenario analysis for 2020-2021 season. And this work is made by Silvia London, Maria Jose Alonso Perez, and me and myself. The objective of this work is to carry out an exploratory analysis of data for the municipality of Rocha, in Uruguay, and possibly projections on the level of tourist activity after the impact of socioeconomic restrictions, national and international, to the health of nations. This paper considers recent reports on the supply side and the demand side. The supply, we consider accommodation capacity in Rocha, and in the demand side, we consider Rocha survey tourist profile from 2019. Based on this, level of occupancy in accommodation establishments and tourist revenue are presented under different scenarios for 2020-2021, also next summer. While Rocha is located is frontier from Brazil, let's have some information about Rocha, but I will throw this because it's for time. We consider at this section the total number of establishments in Rocha, the total rooms, and the total number of beds available during summer. This is a survey from the municipality, and we doesn't include campsite data. Rocha also has another source, an important source of accommodation offer that are from second houses or rental houses. There are no official records of rental homes in Rocha, so this is an estimated based on the university, but we don't use this information for this work. Maybe for the next workshop we can do with this data, but not for now. From the demand side, according to Rocha Beach Survey Tourist Profile, from last summer, most of Rocha beach visitors during the summer are from Uruguay, 66.3%, followed by Argentinian residents in 27%. And then far away come Brazil, that represents 3% of the visitors, and the rest of South America, Europe, North America, and Asia, less than 2% each. According to Mintur, that is the ministry from Uruguay, Rocha received 76,000 non-resident visitors in the first trimester of 2020, this year. Beach survey estimates non-resident visitors are 33%, 33.7% of the total. So we estimate that in Rocha during the first trimester of 2020, we have 228,000 total visitors, just to have an idea the amount of our tourism. This is just to illustrate the number of non-resident tourists whose main destination is Rocha in the last 10 years. And how can you see that it's increasing? Just in 2019 was decreasing, and it's almost approximately 4 to 6% of the total non-resident visitors in Uruguay. And these are total expenses. We have information from the 2017, 2018, and 2019. And as you see, the travel expenses are increasing in the last 3 years, but the blue line is non-resident visitor spending in Rocha, and the red line are visitors, resident visitors from Uruguay. Most of them come from Montevideo, and is increasing. So this is the structure of the expenses in Rocha. We also make an expectation survey. We asked to the accommodation sector in Rocha about the expected income in next summer, 2020-2021. And they answer us that they expect the same income, almost 38% of the establishments. Slightly lower, almost 70.7%, greater than last year, 11.5%, and much lower, 42.3% of establishments expect that income will be much lower next year. We also asked about expected occupancy, and it's similar. It's the same occupancy as last year, 38%, slightly lower, 19.2%, greater than last year. Last year, I'm talking about last summer, sorry, 19.2%, and much lower than last summer, 23.1%. But we also ask in this survey about the reservation level that they have today in compare with last year in the same data, in the same date. And same reservation level is 15%, slightly lower 7.7%, greater only 3.8%, much lower than last year at 38.5%, and not reservations yet, 34.6%. These are, well, we also make a scenario analysis, and we have some preliminary conjectures about with the three groups of establishments. We make 3 scenarios that we did. Only Uruguayan visitors, 66.33%. That's one scenario. The second scenario is 50% of Argentinian tourists continue to visit Rocha or are replaced by Uruguayan tourists. And the third scenario is 100% of Argentinian tourists continue to visit Rocha or are replaced by Uruguayans. As you can see in these bars, The first two bars, the blue one is rooms, total rooms, and orange is total beds. That was last summer. And the second two bars are from scenario 1, the other scenario 2, and the third scenario 3. And under these three scenarios, we cannot expect that we are achieved last year occupation, not in beds, not in rooms. These three scenarios can be analyzed also under establishment demand expectatives. We also use the same scenarios, and as you see here, the first group, we use the expectatives are greater than last year, 10% greater. The second group, we analyze if the expectatives are the same as last year, and these two last ones are smaller, 20% smaller and 25% smaller. The blue bar is the total occupation. Orange is scenario 1, gray scenario 2, and yellow scenario 3. So as you can see, even on the optimistic case, that is the first one, under scenario analysis, and the best scenario analysis was the yellow one, Rocha places that could be occupied never reached scenario without pandemic case. No, and this is the optimistic case, and we don't expect that. When we analyze scenarios for revenues, we made 5 different scenarios. The first one is 66.3%, second one is 80%, third 100% of residents, all of them residents, and then we made some mix between residents and non-residents, 2 scenarios with mix. And we use the structure of expenses of the last 3 years. As you see, 2017 is blue bar, 2018 is orange bar, and 2019 is gray bar. These are the first 3 columns of the chart are the historical expenses, and each one of the group of bars are the different scenarios. So the best one is the most interesting is the scenario 3, that if we analyze under the 2019 structure or level of expenditure, the total revenue by residents will overcome the last year income. But scenarios 4 and 5 shows a combination between residents and non-resident tourists. They don't achieve the same revenue levels. And the difference comes from the level of expenditure in each year. As you see, in 2017, non-residents spent more than residents, but then 2018 and 2019, it was the opposite. In the pandemic context, this is an optimistic characteristic of the demand from the perspective of 2020-2021 season. The conclusions we made that the expected occupancy is optimistic because almost of the establishments, 60%, think that the occupancy will be equal to or greater than last season. However, the scenario analysis shows that also at the optimistic case, occupancy level will be lower than last season. Given the new restriction for Argentina to buy dollars, that Silvia explained it very well, the best scenarios depend on nearby tourism increase. Even if the exploratory analysis shows that the tourism activity in Rocha is strongly related with nearby visitors, there is almost 35% of the annual occupancy from foreign tourists. The restriction to travel, the uncertainty produced by the coronavirus, and the lack of vaccine contribute to negative expectation over tourist service demand. The scenario analysis allows us to see these effects. Only a stronger increase of nearby tourism can overcome the fall of income in Russia. We expect a fall in tourism income due to the economic restriction derived from the crisis, and due to restriction because of the pandemic situation. Based on the outcome, it is estimated that results are strongly conditioned to Uruguayan tourists' behavior. Intra-country tourism competition, because we are in competition with Punta del Este, and supply adequacy. Thank you very much. This is all.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for your presentation. And please don't forget the questions. Send us your questions to Victoria and Professor Silvia. And I want to invite now the presentation, Tourism, Teleworking, Precarity, and COVID-19 in Argentina. Please, our friend Natalia Porto.
Thank you. Good morning. Ana, can I share, or Romulo, can I share?
That's you, Natalia. You can share your screen.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to talk about tourism, teleworking, precarity, and COVID-19 in Argentina. This is a work done with Carolina Garcia, Luciana Renzelia, Agustina Romero, y Ana Rucci. So we are more authors than words in the paper. Well, I'm going to talk something about tourism. As all we know, tourism is an economic activity. It's one of the most dynamic sectors, economic sectors around the world. And we focus mainly in that tourism is a direct and indirect source of employment. For example, in 2018, tourism represented more than 10% of global GDP around the world, and 1 out of 10 jobs comes from tourism. And the other important thing is, as Silvia already said, is that we have tourism divided by domestic and international tourism, and more than 70% in 2018 of total tourism expenditure comes from domestic tourism. Sorry. So I want to emphasize one important particularity of the tourism sector, that is that according to the World Trade Organization, tourism is a service. And travel and tourism services include services provided by hotels, restaurants, travel agencies, and tourism guides and other related services. And as a service, international tourism, for example, is when we talk about international tourism and we talk about trade in international tourism, this is the type of trade that it is in mode 2, what a World Trade Organization called mode 2 of trading services, that is consumption abroad. What does it mean? It means that the consumer has to move to the country where it is the supplier. So the supplier provides services to consumer from other countries within its territory. And the important point here is that pre-COVID, this was the trade mode with fewer restrictions. But what happens during COVID? The tourism activity, the international tourism activity, and also the domestic tourism activity literally stopped because borders shut down around the world, and domestic regulations in many countries prohibited the movement of people. So this has caused, and now is causing, until now is causing devastating impacts on the tourism industry. Regarding employment, more than 100 million jobs are predicted to be lost because of the pandemic. In Latin America, the number is about 5 million jobs. To have an idea, as Silvia already said, in Argentina, the numbers for international tourism during April and July 2020 are literally 0. So, regarding this context, which we want to ask or to know or to investigate about which world do we have to face after COVID in relation to tourism employment. So, as I have already said, tourism is a service, so it needs the physical presence of the consumer, of the tourist, the movement of the tourist to the place where the tourism activity is developing. So when we're thinking about tourists, tourism is a non-teleworkable activity. That is, it's an activity that can't be done from home. But we provide another vision of that. Another important point here is that the works or the jobs that are called as non-teleworkable have certain characteristics linked to precarious labor conditions. And COVID deepens or unveils these negative characteristics of tourism employment. So the contributions from our study are mainly two. One is more theoretical, because we try to investigate about how can we move to a more teleworkable tourism sector. So we elaborate a theoretical teleworkability indicator for each of the activities that are part of the tourism sector. Then we identify, according to literature, the characteristics of these non-teleworkable jobs, the precarious conditions that I already said. And then we analyze on the empirical part, tourism employment, taking into account teleworkability, the precarious conditions, different subsectors of tourism, and touristic and non-touristic regions in Argentina. So for the theoretical part, we build a teleworkability indicator following these steps. First, we use 3 international surveys to consider a set of variables and specifications to characterize the possibilities of teleworking of different occupations and activities. To know or to disaggregate these activities, we use the report of the Spain Observatory of Occupations. And then we made an analysis, and we assign values from 1, this is very infrequent, to 3, very frequent, for each of the tasks and the context of the different occupations in the tourism sector. For example, I have here one question to give an example to know this procedure. For example, one question is, how often does your job involve working physically for an extended period? We analyze this type of questions for all of the occupations. For example, for a concierge, we punctuate this question with a 3, very frequent. We made this for all the activities and occupation and all the different tasks and contexts, and the results determine how teleworkable the occupations are, and we define with a value of 1 those which are totally teleworkable, and with a value of 0 those which are non-teleworkable, with grades in between. Then we do that for the tourism sector in general, and obtain a final value. So here we have our results. We have the subsectors, the occupations, the different methods, and the examples of our results. For example, if you see restaurants, we obtain by the 3 methods a value of 0.43, which means that it is an activity which approximates to non-teleworkability. Our results, we can summarize it in the table that you can see. So travel agencies and cultural, sports and entertainment activities obtain the major indicator, that is the sectors that are more capable of being teleworkable. For accommodation, we obtain a value of 0.5, emphasizing the importance of physical proximity and the possibility of adaptability of the use of new technologies, of course, according to the company and the context. And for restaurants, we find a minor indicator, emphasizing also the physical proximity and the characteristics and the standards for the works of places of the workers. The other step is to characterize workers in occupations not compatible with teleworking. Because we find that according to literature, fewer teleworkable jobs usually present a smaller share of women, younger workers, lower average wages, fewer educated workers, higher share of self-employment, part-time and non-permanent occupations, and higher levels of informality. So we compute these values for touristic and non-touristic regions in Argentina, for the tourism sector and the rest of the services, and we identify a ranking of worst characteristics or conditions for teleworking. Here we have the comparison for tourism and the rest of the services, for touristic regions and non-touristic regions, and the city of Buenos Aires that we consider separately because it has a really different behavior. And for example, these numbers are telling us that 45% of women work on tourism, on touristic agglomerates, and that there is a 50% of informality in tourism sector in touristic regions, between the 36% of informality in the rest of the services in touristic regions. So with this information, we rank these characteristics from 1 to 6, tourism versus rest of the services, touristic and non-touristic regions, and we find that working in tourism on non-touristic regions ranks first regarding the worst characteristics for teleworking. Working on tourism on touristic agglomerates ranks second. So we can think, and we have to investigate a little more about if tourism maybe attenuates the worst characteristics of these employments. We make 2 additional exercises to complement our analysis, and we compare tourism with the most teleworkable sector, that is financial services, and with the least teleworkable sector, that is domestic services. These most and least teleworkable sectors are defined by literature, and as expected, we find that tourism is on an intermediate position between these 2 activities. And tourism gets the worst scores related with these activities in share of women, age, and experience. And the last exercise that we have done is very interesting because we analyze the subsectors of tourism for which we compute the teleworkability indicator, and we try to analyze the relationship between the teleworkability indicator and the characteristics of these precarious jobs or the worst characteristics for employment. And here we have that restaurants and cultural and sports and entertainment services are the sectors which have the worst characteristics for employment. But restaurants have a teleworkability index more close to 0, and the other activity, a teleworkability index more close to 1, more teleworkability. So we identify for restaurants a perfect match between less teleworkability conditions or fewer teleworkability conditions and the most precarious working conditions. And if we analyze restaurants distinguishing the activity in touristic and non-touristic regions, in touristic regions, restaurants have 6 of the worst characteristics of employment. And the bad notice is that restaurants represent almost 50% of tourism employment. Regarding accommodation and cultural, sports, and entertainment services, they are on an intermediate situation. For example, accommodations ranks 2 in terms of less teleworkability, but 4th in terms of the most precarious labor conditions. So it has the least precarious labor conditions. And travel agencies combine more teleworkability and fewer precarious labor conditions than the other sectors. So this is our work. We study tourism employment to confirm that COVID-19 have deeper revealed these negative characteristics of tourism employment. We think that through adaptation to new technologies and the new teleworkability, new world scenario, Regional economies must engage in make teleworkable the occupations and activities of the tourism sector that have the opportunity. So we elaborate our teleworkability index. Our empirical analysis reveals that tourism in non-touristic regions is the most vulnerable sector. And restaurants, mainly in touristic regions, is the subsector that urgently needs a strategy to survive. And we have to trust, as already said, in domestic tourism to recover, but although this is the way, there are a long path of uncertainties waiting for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your presentation. And now I would like to invite the André Coelho, the researcher from Fundação Getúlio Vargas, to present the impacts of COVID-19 perspectives for the Brazilian tourism.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Share my screen here. Hope you can see now. Okay, so Professor Veronica, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my ideas here with such a high-level group of specialists in tourism. Thank you, Professor Osiris, for the invitation, Professor Gabriel. It's a pleasure to share this panel with Professor London, Professor Magani, and Professor Garcia. Our study here is a study in course. We're still in progress of the data that we are producing. We have the focus on analyzing the effects of COVID-19, and therefore we are now, at this moment, we are checking data that we have produced to here, and then trying to forecast and recalibrating the models for the future. Our humble work here is to try to produce a little bit of a scenario complementing the ideas that have been already shared here, especially related to jobs, as Professor Garcia just mentioned, research related to that. We are working on trying to build recommendations to the sector, to the private and the public sector, and contribute a little bit with all the other institutions that are producing data to the recovery of tourism in Brazil. 2 points that are relevant to highlight before the showing the data. I have 4 slides here with the results that we have so far. First is that despite the fact that we are working with jobs and from the economic perspective, focusing on this, I personally think that there are several other issues that must be watched. And for us, specialists in tourism, there are issues, a lot of issues related to sustainability and to the future of the tourism that I really believe, even from an economic point of view, that need to be addressed, and then we have an opportunity now to address. So it's just to say that the tourism is not only the economic factor. I truly believe that tourism is a complex phenomenon, and other aspects must be, as I said, other aspects must be highlighted and discussed. I'm personally now studying the jobs and the way we communicate the supplies, the destinations are communicating with their future consumers, new consumers and old consumers in the recovery and the post-COVID-19, looking at the perspective of the environment. So this is 1 point. And the second point is that the data that we're using here are all collected from the Brazilian let's say, official institutions that produce data. And therefore, we are not, unfortunately, not measuring here the informal jobs, the informal employments, which is in tourism in Brazil. I believe that is the same case in other countries in South America. is that we have a strong participation of the informal jobs. We still have a strong participation of the informal jobs in tourism. So, as we all know, the tourism is going to be one of the sectors that is going to suffer the most in this situation of the COVID-19. And since the pandemic started, the question that we wanted to answer in our report, that we are now building a paper, is that how it's going to be next, how long it's going to last, and are we going to be in social isolation for how long? And when the market started to recover, how is the tourism going to behave? So, and then for that, we analyzed, as I said, the secondary data from the official departments in Brazil that are producing statistical data. And also we went through some interviews with the representatives of the associations of several segments of tourism to understand and calibrate our predictions that I'm going to show. So, so the data that we are showing is considering a 5-month stop in the production. So 5 months of social isolation, and then we consider 5 months here because in Brazil, the tourism, we observed the stopping the operations in tourism by the second half of March, and then the second half of August started to recover, started to reopen. So we are considering a 5 months of almost no operations. The reductions were extremely high, as I think Professor Landa mentioned that. We were basically in the same levels of 90% of reduction in terms of production and operation in tourism. And then we tried to build scenarios of recovery for tourism. And then we found that the domestic segments should have at least 12 months, should need at least 12 months to recover. And as I said, these numbers we are recalibrating right now, but they're still around 12 months. And the international segments should need at least 24 months to recover. And when we say recover, is to get back to the levels of production that we had in 2019. So my apologies if some of the sectors here are in Portuguese. I can assure you that I've been through this presentation a few times and I didn't realize it was in Portuguese here inside the graphic, but I think it's possible to understand. So we basically here have 3 zones. One zone of analysis is the social isolation. The second zone of analysis is what we call stabilization. And the third zone is what we call the recovery. As I said, for the first zone, we used secondary data from the official areas of organizations in Brazil. And then for this, the scenarios and to build the predictions, we use data from research that we have. We have historical data from 10 years back of supply and demand research and economics in tourism, the quarter economic evaluation of tourism, the consumers evaluation of tourism. It's a monthly publication, and then the research for economic conjuncture of tourism, which is an annual publication. So, and throughout this data, plus the interviews with the representatives of the tourism associations, we could we tried to build a prediction of recovery. So what it shows here in the data is that for the period of social isolation, most of the sectors of tourism, these are, on this lower part here are the sectors of tourism according to the characteristical activities of tourism activities by the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. So these are the level of production that we have is minus 90%, which almost stopped the tourism sector. And then in this area, this orange line here represents the bars and restaurants, which are one of the segments that actually, I wouldn't say could recover, but could resist a little bit more because they have a stronger capability of adaptation. They went to delivery, they moved it to delivery, they moved it to use the local community there to sell more. They've made promotions. And there's something related as well to the participation of the government in terms of keeping the jobs. So it's something that I will highlight in the next slide. So this is one of the segments that resisted a little bit more, but it still is a problem because this is one of the segments that employs the most. So, and especially people in the lowest levels of education, which is something that Brazil needs a lot, employment in this area. So the second zone is the stabilizing zone. We predict that for the domestic tourism, first local and then long distance will come first in terms of recovery, but not all the areas together. Some areas will have the opportunity to recover first. That's going to depend a lot, according to our qualitative discussions, on the next season, the next high season that we're going to have, which is going to be January this year, January and February. Normally, according to our data, by September and September, October, and November, more October and November, is when actually the consumer starts to think about buying the next trip. This is what the historical data of consumers show. And so far, we haven't seen any movement in this curve, any significant movement on this curve. We're still seeing a lot of local tourism, and people are not actually, at least the data shows that people are not yet planning too much in the future in terms of tourism. And then the third area here is the recovery itself, that after the domestic tourism, the business tourism and international tourism will start gradually to pick up. Obviously, business in a very specific way, they have a lot to, that we are predicting a few changes in the way where we are going to have tourism, business tourism and events as well. And in the near future, at least in the next year. And international tourism, because it depends on several other things that are related to promotion, related to the image, to a lot of things that will impact the international tourism. That is not only the infrastructure or having the flights or having the availability of people or the currency. So there are other issues that are going to need to be combined for the recovery of the international tourism. So in terms of jobs, what we did here in this is we tried to cross the data of the production with, not to cross, but to put together the data of the production in tourism that we had before, which is the yellow line, with the number of jobs that we could measure with the Ministry of Economics that were being already lost, and the rate of losing jobs. We used that to predict that what would be the lowest point. And we reached the number of 1.1 million jobs, formal, as I said, formal jobs lost because of the pandemic, and in a universe of 2.7 million jobs. So, and then this blue line here shows, but the government is actually moving, is actually fighting back the COVID-19 and trying to put some measures to avoid the loss of jobs. And two of them are relevant for us in tourism here. I've highlighted here on the left, and are the MP 936, MP 948. MP stands for a law that's not still a law. It's still a prediction of a law. So the president signs a law that's going to be evaluated by the Congress, but this gets immediate effect. So it's 2 or 3 months of effects, and then it needs to be ruled by the Congress and can be transformed into a law or neglected. So, but in both of them are going to be transformed into laws. One is already actually. And then the 936 is one measure that says that basically the government is going to use an insurance, jobs insurance for the companies not to fire people. So the companies, especially hotels and restaurants, and we from our research, we do know lots of hotels, lots of restaurants, lots of tourism companies that are using this law. So they actually put their employees in layoff position, but they are not fired. They stay home, they're not working, but they're receiving this insurance from the government. And they have the guarantee of their jobs back when the situation is finished. This law was actually estimated to work for 3 months and then extended for 5 months and now extended to the end of the year. And that is actually keeping a lot of companies of not firing people, but that is an effect that I'm going to show you later. And then with this situation, we see actually the curve of job losses change a little bit. So we may be saving around 400,000 jobs with measures like this. And the second measure is more related to tourism. The first one is not only for tourism, it's for every company. The second one is 948, is more related to tourism and says basically that the tourism companies that have packages, for example, that have been sold before the COVID-19 to be operated during the COVID-19 don't have to give their money back straight away. They can negotiate exchanges in terms of services, or they can negotiate giving the money back, but only after 1 year. So this is something that was done to protect a lot of the companies. And this is one study that we're doing right now. This is actually a conclusion, not a conclusion, a continuation of the studies that we have been doing. No one has seen this publicly yet, so in this event we are seeing for the first time. As we started to recover, we crossed the data of the new jobs being using the CAGED data, which is an area of the Ministry of Economics that studies the number of jobs that are being created. And we're starting to, as the market is recovering, we started to question ourselves, okay, how are actually the places in terms of tourism? Are we creating new places? Are we using the places that were vacant? How is that working? And we realized that actually lots of other sectors are starting to create new places and new jobs, are starting to pre-hire or to bring back their employers to the operation. But actually, for example, in the accommodation and food, which is our segments that are extremely important in tourism, we don't have new jobs being created, and we still don't have our old vacancies being occupied back. So we're still facing a crisis. And the effect that I said that we had from the laws, the previous laws, is that we may be, and this is a hypothesis by now, but we may be seeing a new wave of job losses in the future, because there are, as I said, there are a lot of companies that are keeping their employees under special license by now, but some of them don't even have money to fire these people because the labor laws in Brazil are extremely complicated in terms of a company to dismiss someone. And so the fines are very high. So they don't have, most of the companies don't have money to fire people off. Not most, but some of the companies don't have money to fire the people off. And we are seeing now is that we are not only not creating the places, but we may see a wave of people getting fired in the future if we don't recover economically. Okay. And last but not least, there's a set of recommendations that we brought from our study. I would like to highlight 3 of them, just to have more time for the discussion here. One is in number 1, expanding government actions to maintain jobs is something that is already being done. A lot of pressure from the tourism sector is happening right now to expand these measures to protect the jobs in tourism. It's a sector that's now recovering. And please don't take me wrong, I'm not being negative here. I'm actually very positive. I see the tourism as a solution, an economic solution to Brazil, especially to Rio de Janeiro, as we are in Rio right now. But this is a real situation, so we have to work with this. The second one is in number 3. It's accelerating the granting for protection of conservation in units. services is something that is calling our attention, that within this recovery, we're seeing a lot of search for, let's say, tourism products related to conservation units, to parks, to open areas. And we need to work harder on the economic model that we're gonna have for these areas in the future. I think it is something we have to bear in mind. And the last one is in number 6, the real-time communication before the return to activities. This is something related to sustainability, to the economics as well, because we are seeing that there is a demand already, not only in Brazil, in the world, but there is a demand for tourism. We can see there is a demand for people, especially local demand for traveling. As the market is open, there are a lot of people who are already traveling in the local areas of Brazil. But if these destinations are not prepared and not communicating well, the situation, the real situation, we may have this curve changing, and this demand that is actually being created right now may drop in the future, and they will have to reinvest and work again on invest in this demand to have the curves going up again. So this is what I have for now, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the presentation. And we can see here that it's not a very nice scenario. All the presentations pointed to painful recovery, difficult recovery, old problems of tourism even worse now, like the precarity of jobs and other problems related to the negative balance of payment. For example, in Brazil, it's a big problem, and in Argentina also, as showed us Professor Silvia. And also something that really strikes me is the infrastructure of the tourism destinations, because if the small hotels or even the big hotels have this great difficulty to recover, there will be no infrastructure or a poor infrastructure for receiving the growing demand that will come in the future, we hopefully. And well, now I want to open for questions. We have one question here from Professor Silvia Londo to Natalia, but I think that Silvia could directly talk to Natalia about it.
Okay, thank you. Natalia, yes, I think that my question is if you consider the production function of the tourist economic activities. I think that because it's a fixed coefficient 1, maybe there is some importance to analyze when you consider teleworkability or the possibility to make telework in some employments from tourist activity, and the others. There is a relation very, very fixed in these two kinds of work.
Yes, we don't consider explicitly, but the questionnaires of the surveys mention different activities, context, and tasks. So they ask, for example, if people work with machines, or if people need social proximity. There are different dimensions. It is an excellent idea to try to. I was thinking when you are talking, how can we make it more explicitly? But I think some part of your question is answered because the surveys consider it, but we don't consider it explicitly. But as you said, for example, as I said, financial services are the most teleworkable activity because there is only people working in financial services. So it is obvious. So I think we have 50% considered that. But I'm going to think it for the future. It's an excellent idea.
Yes, okay, because I think that, for example, even in the people work, you need, for example, for a restaurant, you need people in the restaurant and people working by telework.
By teleworking, yes.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to know if any of the authors wants to make questions for the others. If you have questions, one for the others. Okay. Well, and Professor Gabriel Brida has any comments right now?
No.
No. Okay.
Right now, no.
We have right now, no. Okay, Professor Osiris, Professor Glauber. No.
Hello. I'd like to ask something to André, because you can see some enterprises disappearing. So maybe in the near future, we are gonna have some problems with the supply chain in tourism. How do you think we could act to keep the chain of tourism working, you know, as every service depends on every service, you know, you have to have a full service to have the tourist experience, because I think it's a very, very big problem, especially when you talk about the smaller enterprises that they don't have breath to stay so long without cash, you know. So how do you see that, and do you have any proposal? What you're thinking about that?
Okay, thank you. I totally agree.
Thank
I think the small business are the ones who are going to suffer the most. I would say that in a regular economic answer, I would say, okay, the demand is going to adapt and to the supply, and the market will adapt. But in the situation that we're living right now, I think this answer is not possible. Especially when you consider tourism, because in tourism we have tourism in the big cities and tourism in the small locations that actually depend a lot on tourism. I think that happens in Brazil and lots of countries in South America. These companies, they in an average company would say that our measure shows that they have possibility of survival without any sales. They have possibility of survival of 1 to 2 months. But the micro companies and the small companies of Brazil, they have zero. They don't survive. They survive from what they get the previous month. So lots of those companies nowadays, they are already gone. Some of them we don't know yet. So these complication in terms of supply or demand that you are predicting, I believe that's going to happen. And we are not seeing that yet, because our market is not fully recovered yet. But if we recover, I believe there is a chance that we're going to recover. Let's say our demand is going to be faster than the supply possibilities to attend that demand. So especially in the first moment, as I said, there is a prediction of a drop in this curve of demand in the near future as well. So we're going to consume a lot, and then it's going to drop, and then we're going to consume again. It's going to drop again. So I think that's going to work like this. And I believe that nowadays, considering this situation and believe me, I'm not one of the asks for the protection of the government all the time. I think right the opposite. But in this case, I think there is first of all, the government needs to participate, needs to interfere on that. That's happening everywhere in the world. It's happening in Europe, happening in Australia, happening in the United States. So the government needs to interfere with that. So try to make these companies survive throughout credit, better credit, or throughout financial help, or throughout local investments in the supply chain. And but also I think maybe it could work if we had a better organization in terms of promotion of tourism, in order to the demand be a little bit driven to the consumption of local tourism first, and then expand to a bigger domestic tourism, and then to international tourism. So people being driven in order to make the industry itself to recover. So we all together, I know that might sound a little strange in terms of economics, but to be very honest, the situation we are living right now is something crazy. So so we could start consuming locally first, and then help with the help of the government and all the other specific institutions that help the small companies working together, in order to make them, to give them some support to recover, because otherwise they are going to disappear. And some of them will get back, but some others will disappear for, I would say, for at least 2 years before they start to have some sort of chance to get back in the market.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you.
I have a question for Silvia.
Okay, go on.
I was thinking about if you consider to perhaps make the analysis for Latin America. I'm not sure, and if you can add something, because I was thinking that Argentina took a lot of measures, and extremely measures, but perhaps Peru no, and Brazil different measures regarding prohibitions and movement of person and border shut. And I don't know if I'm not sure, because you have a series that is before, no data before the COVID. But if something like this, can you add to your measures to make to have different behaviors from different South America, Central America? I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Natalia. In fact, we analyze, this is an historical analysis, it's not an actual analysis.
No, okay.
I think that for make some projection, like the other work, yes, we must take into account this measure and take into account the differences between countries, because Argentina is the most closed of the countries.
Perhaps,
yes.
Perhaps for the next workshop.
Yes, for the next workshop, you know that because you are Argentine like me, that in Argentina even the local the resident tourist it will be. From now is we don't know what will happen. It will be very hard to make tourists to this year.
Yes.
We don't know. Really, we don't know. Yeah, I think this is the most close of the world.
Of the world, yes.
Yes.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank
I have
you.
a question.
Okay.
I have a question for the authors in general that regards an event that is going to happen at some point in time, and so far I haven't seen predictions considering this event. For instance, the presentation of Andrea, which was very interesting, very enlightening. It considered that tourism production is going to get back slowly but continuously. And I would like to hear the authors in general about what they think is going to happen when the vaccine is available, because that, I think that might represent a huge shock. I don't know, what do you think about?
I can answer. I can make a little conjecture about this. The problem is that the destruction of the activity, the destruction of the employments and activity, the restaurants, hotels are that will close their activities is an event, an irreversible event. That is to say, it's a shock like a headquarter. Is a greater shock, and when vaccine will be in the market, all this lost can be. It must be revived, if you want. It's very different. It's very difficult to predict the future, because there will be a lot of lost in the activity. I think it's like a natural event is a disaster. From the disaster, from the future, is very difficult to see how many times you need to recover the activity, the dynamic of the activity.
Yes, I think I have two ideas. The one is that I think that people needs to travel. So we look around the world that when you permit something little, people is going to travel again wherever people can. So I think if we have the vaccine, not the problems will be solved, but the recovery will be immediately. But thinking about what Silvia said, I have an idea that perhaps all of we that will work in tourism have to study more the previous events. Obviously, there are no an event similar to this, but regarding earthquakes, terrorism, the other epidemics, so perhaps we need to make a real assessment of previous events to be more prepared to know what is going to happen. For example, for an earthquake or a terrorism attack, these events never were global, never affected all the world. But we can extrapolate the consequences, the recovery, the period of recovery, obviously having, but I think that this is a work that we have to do together. Only one opinion.
Well, if I may, I'm going the same direction of the previous two professors, but I think we need to keep analyzing the past, the close past, and trying to predict the future with the data that we have. I do agree that with the vaccine, the tourism tend to improve its movements. It's important to highlight that according to consumers research, the tourism is always part of the consumer's basic expenditures somehow. So what happens is, even in crisis moments, it substitutes the travel, if it normally does in international travel or long distance Brazilian travel or in South America. We are in economic crisis, it reduces that travel to something local. So I agree with Natalia that the people are always trying to move somehow. And I do agree that we may have this boom of travel after a vaccine, or a moment, if not a vaccine, but a moment with a more certainty that we are safe. But I think we need to keep analyzing and putting together recommendations for government and private sector, because this demand may not be that stable. I think that we're going to have drops in the demand. In the end, it should be a growth line, but I think it will vary a lot. And economically speaking, I think the companies tend to adapt, but as Professor Landa said, I don't know if how many companies are going to be out of the market by the time we start to recover officially, let's say like that.
I would like to say something. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think that I think that we have to think that labor market is sticky, no, and it's difficult that people our capital move to another market. So I have that we as economists must to take it into account, because I think it's something different, no, it's something new, but we have to analyze taking this into account. I think that assistance programs are needed now to help workers and to help small enterprises, to affront this situation. But it's not easy that tourist worker take another work different, in the short time. So, well, only I want to share it with you.
I'm also saying, I think that maybe not from the supply side, but from, if we think about the demand side of tourism, maybe the question, I agree with all of what you say, but I think that I'm worried not only about if the tourism sector will be recovery, but I think it's very important to think the way that it will be changed. I think it will be changed a lot, the behavior of people and the demand of people. So maybe tomorrow in the fourth section of this, we have some answers about how the people will change their behavior, about how to make tourism in the future. After that, not only because of they want to feel more sure about health and other things, but also this type of technology that we have to develop very fast to continue our lives. It will be also impact on tourism, I think so.
Okay, we have a commentary here from Alicia Woyo from Namibia Business School, the University of Namibia. And he is asking, I think it's more comment, was there ever be a vaccine for this virus, or we are dreaming quite big? So if there's not a vaccine, things will be really difficult for tourism, because of the necessity of mobility of people and the direction of people inside inside places. You can even make some events online like we are doing now, but hotels and many other tourism services will really be more in trouble with that. But I would like to ask a question for the authors. I think we still have some time, about the prices. What do you think? Because I've been listening that there will be like a price war right now, because the companies are really needing to make cash and to return. But I have been listening to that tourism will be quite a pricey thing in the future, or in the rebound. So I would like to hear your thoughts about it.
Natalia, yes.
Sorry.
No, it's better for me.
Okay, I'm going to comment only a thing that is interesting, that here in Argentina, we, as Silvia said, we don't know where are we going to be on holidays. But the program for the future is that you can buy your holidays now, and then the 50% of the of your expenditures are going to be reimbursed. I think this is a measure that it is funny for consumers, but as you said, Veronica, it's impossible to sustain economically for the profits of a firm. But I think it's the only way to recover. Or the alternative to I don't know if now the government is going to establish the other alternative, that you can, I don't remember if it is no, it's okay. No, nothing, because I'm not sure. I don't want to say anything that I'm not sure. But this point, and the paper of Schubert that we are going to see today at the end of the day, it makes a point about the price of the services of tourism. So we can share some ideas, some theoretical ideas there. Thank you.
Sylvia would like to speak.
No, thank you, because it's at this moment it's very for the Argentinian people or academic Argentinian people, it's very difficult to think about prices. We prices for us, maybe there is no prices at this moment. And if I think about the activity, the Argentine activity, if I think about on the war, the tourism activity is very different, because at the European Union there will be a lot of programs, if you want, to have discounts and some promotional prices and so on, to recover the activity, the tourism activity. But for us, for the Argentina, we have no prices at this moment, because our activity is null. There is no tourist activity, not at all.
I think I can complement, giving a very small example that it was not official or academically checked, but from the previous holidays we had in Brazil this month, the independence holidays in the city of Búzios. That is, I'm using this city because it's quite well known by other participants, and they have opened the tourism there, and the occupation was close to 80% from the rooms that were available. Not all the rooms are available. Let's say that the hotels and pousadas needed a limit of rooms that they could offer to the market. And data from the State Tourism Council and some contacts with associations show that the prices, they didn't have, let's say, the price is more balanced. We had people charging twice the price, the regular prices, and others making very strong promotions. Both of them had their rooms occupied. So what shows that, as we were saying before, the demand is quite strong, or at least this short-term demand is quite strong, but it doesn't mean that it's going to last for the future. So it looks like people were a little bit desperate to travel, and I'm not commenting here the other issue that there were no people using masks, and there were traffic jams in the city, and all those issues that the tourism was not totally prepared, but it is a recovery. So that's what I have to say by now. I tend to think that in terms of prices, the economics rules will rule, and they will find a balance. The market will find a balance.
Okay, Andrea, thank you very much. Yes, I was in Búzios, and I was making my isolation, social distancing in Búzios, and really it was a little frightening because when they opened the town, it flooded with tourists, and people are not really taking good care of the security measures anymore. And this, for me, is very interesting to observe. I'm from consumer behavior, you know, and it's interesting because it seems that really people want to travel very hard, and maybe they will do it anyway, even if we don't have the right structure, infrastructure, or even with a lot of difficulties that will come. Well, it will be interesting to observe this all and to talk more in the other sessions. We have a lot of sessions. We have sessions that will even consider the consumer behavior, point of view, and the behavior economics point of view that may help us to help the tourists to do the right thing a little bit more. Well, now we are reaching the end of this great morning. It was really nice to see all these wonderful presentations and data on the economics of tourism and the impacts of COVID. And I want to open for a final question, if you have a final question, or if you have a final comment. And then we can move to our lunchtime, and we'll be back soon. Are you okay? Everybody's okay? Okay. Natalia, we have some, yes?
It's me, Osiris.
Who's talking? Oh, Osiris. Okay.
No, I'd like to talk something about the importance of the research right now, you know. I think it's a moment that society really needs us to research and really need us to think about real solutions because the tourism sector is gonna really suffer. It's already suffering, but it's gonna suffer much more in the future. And I think it's our role to do something. I'm very worried about that. And I think this event is an opportunity for us to get together, to make a network. You see, the Latin America has a very similar reality as we saw, and other part of the world too. So it's nice to think about that, how we can connect ourselves to research and give some solutions to the tourism sector.
Couldn't agree more.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
Yes,
okay,
I agree.
so, hi. Well, so we can have our lunchtime, and we will be back on 1:30 p.m. sharp. Okay.
Just another thing, Veronica. We have to take a picture. We have to take a picture of everybody. Could you open your cameras for us to take a picture of the event, please? Valerio, it's with you.
Valerio.
Because it's one second. There are a lot of people without the camera. Mariana Carvalho, Professor João, Professor Thelma. Nobody more? Okay. I'm taking another one. Thank you.
Everybody's jealous about your background, Valerio.
Yes, Valerio.
Your
Valerio
PDF
has
background.
a lot to read. Yes, Valerio has a lot to read.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. See you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
It's the same
Thank you,
link.
guys.
Bye
It's the
bye.
same link. Okay?
Same link.
When you-
Yes, the same link.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.